So today we're going to debunk some maybe common myths about empathy and help set the stage so that you can determine for yourself if empathy is actually a gift or a curse or maybe something else altogether. So let's start talking about, first of all, what is the gift of empathy? How could empathy be a gift for you as an empath, for people you love, or for the world? Some of the greatest artists, singers, songwriters, poets, helpers, service providers, and the most compassionate, loving people you know are highly, highly empathetic. So what empathy often does for people is it opens them up to the underlying like the underbelly of the world, to the underlying patterns and themes and invisible energies that are running not only just within our own bodies and our own energy fields, but other people's as well as in the greater collective.
Yes, that's a beautiful way to explain that, Lisa. And I would just add that it really is about connecting to the oneness, the wholeness of the universe and of the stream of consciousness that is us, that is God, that is divine energy and source energy. I'd also like to highlight that Lisa mentioned that artistic people are typically empathetic. But what we've really found working with hundreds of women over the years is that we all have the capacity for being empathetic. So when you label yourself, like Lisa said, an empath, it often has this victimness connotation to it where, poor me, I absorb other people's stuff and I can't function in the world because of it. Which, you know, if you followed us for a while, you know that one finger out, three fingers back, we're really asking you to boss up and take ownership of the fact that your own energy field is yours to manage. It is nobody else's but yours, and your emotions are entangled into that energy center. And one of the reasons that sometimes being an empath or being empathetic doesn't feel like a gift but feels like a curse is because you don't know how to manage it.
So true, Jamie, and very well said. And another way of maybe saying it or looking at it, if this hits anybody a little differently, is that what I do see, because I was here for such a long time, so whatever we see outside of us is really a reflection inward, but I really see a lot of empathic people using their empathy as an excuse not to go out in the world, not to be visible. And I can say from personal experience that when you are deep in it, it does feel impossible. It does feel like a curse. It does feel like your energy is so heavy and so low that you can't possibly put one foot in front of the other or pick up a pen and write a blog or go live and get on camera, because you literally feel like you're going to die. And I do understand what that's like, and I was there for a very long time. And what we wanted to come on today and share with you all is that there is a way to still be that sensitive soul that is compassionate and is of service to people without completely collapsing your energetic field and without completely draining your energy or like wearing everybody else on your skin all day long. And it doesn't mean that you're going to lose your sensitivity. It just means that there's a way where you can actually bring your gifts, that the empathy that you've experienced early in your life created for you, bring it out to the world and be able to meet the world with it and share it with people, which is, that's really the gift of empathy, is being able to share it with other people.
I agree. So before we get into what this formula or this method is that we use on a daily basis in order to manage our own emotions and energetic field as people who are highly empathetic, we want to talk about the polarity or the duality in empathy. And so on one end, let's just choose this end. And I can't get this quite straight, but let's say that on one end is full on empathy to the point of codependence, right? Like you cannot manage your life. You're tipped. Yeah. So you're tipped one way because you are constantly absorbing everybody else's energy. And you may even feel like, if I'm in tune with everyone else's energy, I will be okay because I can stay a step ahead of what they might do or say. That is a trauma response. That is a stress response that likely was developed early in childhood.
Absolutely. And there has been research done to show that most people, if not all people, I don't know that I can prove that to say that definitely, but people who are highly empathetic and are deeply on this end of the spectrum often came from a household that was unpredictable in some way. Maybe you had an unpredictable parent. Maybe they were abusive or alcoholic, but it could be as simple as just having a parent that was emotionally unpredictable, maybe kind of rode the emotional roller coaster, and you weren't sure what you were going to get every day. And so your coping mechanism was to highly attune to that parent. And if you could predict the way that they were going to be feeling or the way that they already were feeling that day, then you could feel safe and you could maybe relax. It could be literally that simple. But that day after day after day and developing that coping mechanism began to highly attune you to everybody in your environment, always hypervigilant, always trying to stay a step ahead, always feeling into the undercurrent when you walk into a room. And what that often does for people is in adult relationships now, you literally walk into a room and hyper attune to the lowest vibration so that you can try to raise it up and you can try to create safety around that. So versus walking in and being attracted to the life of the party and the high vibration, you're going to be actually attracted to the low vibration. And then we wonder why so many of us get into really toxic or codependent relationships.
Right.
Would you agree, Jamie?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you become this helper, fixer, healer, and you think that it's how you're built and what you're supposed to be doing. But that severe codependency that really comes out of this need to try to stay ahead of it for safety, ahead of the parent or the coach or the teacher or the older sibling. I mean, this could be any type of
or the boss.
Yeah, any type of relationship. You'll notice you've got that theme or that pattern going over and over and over. You think you're just unlucky, that, you know, it's that poor me kind of thing. But what's really happening is because you are such a people pleaser, you tend to be attracted to people who want to work with people pleasers. We can maybe call them more narcissistic on that duality scale, right? So they, in their stress response when they were growing up, found out that the only person that they could count on was themselves. If they want it done, they need to do it themselves. And when you try to please others, you fail. Their stress response just developed differently. And so their way of handling it is to get people who will do things the way that they want it done. It feels safe, that level of control. So just like we were saying earlier, none of us are empaths. We simply are empathetic in certain situations, in certain relationships with certain people. We also, all of us, have the capacity for codependence and narcissism. So when we put labels on things and we put it in the NLP triangle, identities up here, when we put it at the top of our identity, it makes it very difficult for us to strip these down, these parts of us, and transform them.
That is such a good point, Jamie, because once we decide on how things are in reality, once we make a decision about our perception of reality, that is the only lens we're able to see through until we're able and willing to change our perception. We have a part of our brain that goes out looking for evidence of what we're telling it. So whatever we're telling it, if we tell it that, oh, I'm such a sensitive soul, I'm so empathic, I can't handle being around people, I collapse in relationships, whatever your story is about you, or your story about another person, I always attract narcissists, or I'm just a victim to narcissists or a slave to narcissists, then you're going to only see through that lens and keep attracting that same situation to you over and over and over again. But the good news is there's an easy way out. And because empathy was created early, in an early environment, in an early relationship with at least one or more people, we have to be willing to show up differently and do relationships differently in order to heal the empathy. We can't heal empathy necessarily on our own in a meditation chair in a dark room by ourselves, because trust me, I tried for about a decade and it didn't work. I had to get out into my life. I had to get out with people and in new, different relationships and be willing to show up differently before I was able to heal that part of me. I believe that the old way of thinking of empathy, and at least maybe this is my old way of thinking of it versus a new way of thinking of it, is that some people are empathetic and some people are not. And that's what we're here to debunk a little bit today, is that empathy is really on that axis, like Jamie talked about, the axis. And it's really a matter of how much we are putting our energy outwards versus how much we're contracting inwards. Because if you think about it, if you are feeling out into your environment to see if it's safe, it means that you're feeling unsafe and you're contracting and making yourself small so you can kind of hide out within yourself and not be super visible out to the world because it feels a little bit scary out there. So this visual has been really, really helpful for both of us in our own journeys of understanding empathy, because when you're pushing your energy outwards, which means you're actually really making yourself big and visible and sharing yourself with the world, you are putting yourself out, and it kind of protects you in this energetic bubble. And when you're feeling vulnerable and afraid and like your environment's not safe and your empathy is really turned on, you're hyper attuned to everybody else's energy, it's like all that's coming at you, your energy field shrinks and is small, and now you're feeling overwhelmed by everybody else's energy.
So when you take a look at the image on the left, you can see that person is not doing daily energetic or emotional maintenance. And what happens is they get holes in their field. And that is what Lisa and I are talking about here. Being empathetic simply means other people's energy and emotions are affecting you because you have holes in your field. It's like Swiss cheese. When you take a look at the image on the right and you see this person with this big pushed out energy, their energetic field is full, you may think of that person as a narcissist because they affect others with their energy. And so you can see here, by labeling yourself an empath, and that's good, and labeling the other person a narcissist, and that's bad, you've screwed yourself for the rest of your life. And when Lisa and I figured this out, we went, whoa, we have got to figure out how to manage this ourselves and do a better job at learning how to manage our energy and push it out, and also completely rewriting the story of this codependent narcissist, dynamic that we had been living a specific part of for so long.
Right. One of the most common things I hear from clients as we start to help them reprogram this belief in their empathy and their people pleasing and their codependence, I always like to use the phrase that you are not responsible for other people's feelings. And I've literally had people say, well, yes, I am. And I'll have to explain, actually, every single human alive is completely capable of managing their own energy and their own emotions. Every single one of us is capable of dealing with the emotional states that we have. We are fully equipped as human beings. And maybe people will start to argue, well, there's special needs people or people that, are cognitively impaired. I'm going to just kind of allow us to set that aside for a moment and talk about the general population, because I think that that's a way that we can make an excuse to keep doing what we've always been doing, that it's going to keep getting us the same results. So yes, of course, there is some room for that within this model. But the main point is that if I believe that I am responsible for managing my son's emotions, my son's 21 years old, by the way. So if I believe I'm responsible for making him happy when he needs money or when he needs something and I can't provide it, then I'm saying that he is actually incapable of providing that for himself, that he is actually incapable of managing how he feels about not getting what he wants in that moment. And the truth is that that's a disempowering way of seeing people. It's actually more empowering to see people as fully capable human beings, as fully whole, and that they already have everything that they need, and that they can manage their own feelings about how you're showing up, as long as you're showing up in integrity and alignment and authenticity for you. If you're really showing up in your full light, then it's not our business how other people respond to us and how they feel about it. That's about them. It's not about us.
Right. Exactly, Lisa. And so, like she said, if you're showing up in your expanded version of you, where you are tapped into your own internal light, then you see everyone as their higher selves, and you are encouraging and you are empathetic, but not to the point where you will adjust yourself to fit around someone else. So in this new light, the people that we used to think of as narcissistic have it closer to right than we do as poor us codependents. Now, when it comes to marriage, where does this live, right? Well, I've been both very narcissistic in marriage and I've been very codependent in marriage. So the goal here is to balance that out, guys. The goal here is to balance your masculine and your feminine energies, not the shadow versions, but the divine and sacred versions, and find your own ebb and flow and perfect balance that works well for you and what you came to do and who you are at a soul level.
So is empathy a gift or is it a curse? Well, it's both and it's neither. In order to heal empathy, I'm going to use quotations again, we don't want to reject empathy, because empathy is a really important part of us that helps us connect with other human beings. And we're always wired to find love and safety and belonging with other people. It's part of what makes us human. So we don't want to reject empathy and say that it's a bad thing. We also don't want to tout it as some kind of superior or something that makes us special and on a pedestal and above other people because we're so sensitive and we're so special, which a lot of people who are high on the empathy scale have a tendency to do.
So the image on the right of the person who has this big, beautiful aura around them that they are managing has an open heart at the core. And when Lisa and I figured this out, we really started working with each other because we are biological sisters, best friends, and each other's coach. So we really started helping each other adjust the heart. And every single time you're pointing the finger at someone else or you're pointing it at yourself, the heart is subconsciously closing. So it was at the core of how do we go from having a holy Swiss cheese field to having this big, beautiful, bold field, where we are not necessarily pushing at other people with our energy, but we are modeling this high vibration, this open-hearted, compassionate, loving field or energy. That is what precipitated our development of the expansion method formula that we're going to teach you today.
Many empaths, or people who consider themselves empaths, spend a lot of time in meditation trying to heal old childhood trauma. It's a place I spent a lot of time myself, but what happens there is all the energy's up here. And what Jamie just mentioned is that the thing that really what allowed me to come out and meet the world and be more of a model and be visible was opening up this heart center, this heart area. This is the place where our lower chakras of safety and security and survival meet the world, and our upper chakras of, connecting to the divine come out and meet the world. It's all met here with other people, and this is where the real healing happens.
So that means that step one is allow your heart to open. It is by far the most important thing for you to do first thing in the morning, every single morning, so that you're setting the tone of the day. You're setting an intention for the day and you're setting the tone of the day with that open heart. You're going to notice that you feel more positive, more hopeful. Other people might say, have you lost weight? Did you get a haircut? Because when you start the day that way, you show up in your life differently.
Absolutely. And the second step now is going to be allow yourself to be a little separate from other people. If you're used to being very emotionally entangled and enmeshed with other people's energy fields, step two is detach. It's to remain detached and manage your own energetic space first and foremost before you're trying to manage anybody else.
Yeah. And also we could say detach from your own emotions as well, because emotions are they're on a loop. All the synapses are wired together and there's patterns and themes running. So by detaching from the emotions you typically feel each day, it's going to give you a little bit more space to start to ask yourself, does this serve me? Your reticular activating system and that monkey mind primal portion of your brain has been running the show for a long time. That's your ego, guys. Your ego can tell you that being empathetic is a gift and that no one understands you and that people aren't like you. That's still ego. So by detaching, it gives you a kind of outside third party perspective where now you can do step 3, observe.
Mm-hmm. And when we're talking observe, we want to be in a nice detached observer position where we can get curious about the world. We can get curious about our emotions. We get curious about other people's emotions without making any judgments about them. We can get curious about our relationships. We can get curious about everything happening around us, and we can start to make new perspectives and new observations and see things in a new light from this place. It's very hard to do if you're too enmeshed in your old emotional addictions and patterns. So we want to create some space where we can see things with just a little detachment, and that means being able and willing to be in your own energetic space without needing the codependence of needing to fix anybody else or needing to do anything about it. In this phase, we're just gathering new information and new data.
Yeah. And also without hiding out. So I know a lot of empaths like to hide out and spend a lot of time alone. And so during that phase, that observe phase, it works best when you are with other people. So we do encourage you to get outside of just your comfort zone while you're practicing those first 3 steps. Open your heart before you leave the house. Detach during and after, and before and after. It's kind of a cycle that goes and goes and goes. Mm-hmm. And then when you're in that state of observe, what do you notice? So you're noticing without attachment or judgment. You're just in the notice stage. And when you're noticing deeper themes and patterns besides maybe just the problem of the day or your normal response, what your normal response would have been, we ask you to zip it so that you can notice, what would you like instead? So when you take a look at what normally occurs, is that your ideal? Or would you like the opposite to be true? Would you like the opposite to happen? And that's step 4, reverse.
Beautifully said. Yeah, reverse is such an important one. I just heard somebody say this, to make sure that you're only ever speaking what you want out into the universe. So many of us focus on what I call the problem of the day. We're just fixated on what's wrong today that I need to fix. And we spend our whole day in that space of trying to mentally fix something. And rather than taking the time to flip it, that's why we call it the reverse principle, to flip it and say, what do I want? And be putting the intentions of what we want out into the universe. So if you want a relationship to look different, we need to start seeing it differently. We need to start believing it can be different. And I believe fully and completely that any relationship can be transformed. There are times that definitely we would maybe advise people to leave a relationship, but not without giving it the full chance to show up fully open-hearted in your expansive state as your true authentic self, and give it the opportunity to transform first. If you do that, then if you choose to leave, you can always leave in love. And you can leave without a lot of anger or shrinking or regret or feeling like a victim or like you need to protect yourself. When you leave in love, you can really, truly go out and keep loving. You don't have to go take long healing periods of time because you've done so much of this energetic work already while still in the relationship.
Yeah, very well said, Lisa. So basically you're going to nip it in the bud. You're starting to hear thoughts like he always, he never, she always, she never. You hear that in the back of your brain, and you want to nip it and flip it instead of what you believe always happens. Because remember, you're trying to get out ahead of it so that you can self-protect. Your field is now shrinking because your subconscious brain is saying we are not safe. And safe is not just physical, it's emotional as well. So you want to nip it and flip it. What would I like to be true here? And you want to take a moment to visualize and feel as if you already have that. You can't do that if you're talking. You can't do that if you're judging. You can't
or fixing.
Yeah, you can't do that if you're fixing or people pleasing. And that's where people can get stuck in indecision here, because they're so used to this is what he or she always says or never says.
Yes.
Then like, okay, well, this is what I do next. And so when you open this space decisions are like, holy crap, there's all these possibilities I have not been exploring. And so now indecision can get kind of triggered.
Yeah.
But guys, I invite you at that moment where you have these new possibilities to play in that space, stay in that observe reverse as long as you need until the vision that you create, that ideal vision for this relationship, feels so delicious and so delightful that you can't wait to get to the next step, which is step 5, expand.
Expand. And Jamie's already brought us into expand. You see how this kind of just naturally plays on each other. But she's already brought us into this juicy, delicious, expansive kind of energy. And this is where we start to see people differently. When you can really show up seeing the people that you love or the people you're in relationship with, or even the people you're struggling in relationship with, when you can see them as the person who is capable of rising up, the person who is capable of healing themselves, the person who is brilliant, the person who's creative, the person who is reliable and self-sufficient and adores you, whatever it is that you're wanting in that moment, when you see them as that, and you can really just kind of place that over them and keep your field so big that you don't need to shrink down because you know you're safe, that's when you're in an expansive state. And that's when the people around you start to magically transform before your eyes, and so fast and in ways that will absolutely astonish you, surprise you, and delight you beyond anything we could try to explain here.
Yeah, we do have a few other videos where we've shared some of the things that have happened in our lives and in our clients' lives. But what we teach at the Expansion Group for Women is that you've got to boss up and take ownership of this yourself. And when you change your story and how you show up, you cannot change other people, but you can influence them with this beautiful, full, open-hearted energy. And that brings us to, I'm running out of fingers. Number 6, which is model. And so once you've played with expanding your energy outward and you're not in these contracted states any longer self-protecting, that's when you can really start to model this high vibration, open-hearted energy into the world and in all your relationships. And again, you will start to see that people and opportunities show up because you're living at a higher vibration. And those that you used to maybe micromanage or try to control, even codependency sometimes has themes and threads of control in there, guys. So all those people that you used to have to micromanage, their emotions, their feelings, what they do, what they say, once you're just living from this open-hearted state and modeling, it frees them up to do the same and to become their higher selves. They start to trust that they already have the tools and the answers within them too, because that's what you're modeling.
It's just so easy. For one, it's so easy and it's so lovely, and we're so excited that you're here and learning this with us. And I just want to say, if you look at the acronym now that you can see the whole Adorum, there is an apostrophe between the R and the E on purpose, because when you initially start doing this work and practicing Adorum, you're going to start maybe going through the ADOR quite a bit, kind of like active work. And eventually you'll kind of expand into the E and the M and do a lot of that manually. It's going to just start to happen very naturally within your inner framework. You're going to, the ADOR is like reprogramming you from looking for problems to looking for beauty, looking for gratitude, looking for expansion, looking for opportunity, looking for unconditional love. You're going to start just tuning into those things naturally. And as you do, and your heart opens up fully and you realize it's safe to be this open-hearted in the world, then other people are naturally going to want to be around you. You're going to be more attractive, more alluring, which can feel scary to people who used to feel like it was not safe to be visible in that kind of a way. But that's what the apostrophe is there for, because that first part maybe cycles for a little while, and it's okay if it takes you some time to get into that big expansive state where it feels really safe, and now you're ready to share this energy with other people.
Yeah. So when you get triggered and you find yourself annoyed, frustrated, or overwhelmed with someone else, instead of whatever you're feeling in that moment, we're asking you to remember that acronym, Adorum. Don't get frustrated. Don't hate on them. adore them. People who are hurting hurt other people, hurt people hurt people. I'm sure you've heard that phrase. And so what they need most from you, the people that are offending you, the people that aren't being politically correct in that moment, what they need most from you is open-hearted, full-blown love. And when you learn how to keep your field managed, you have enough love to send outward. When you're living in those contracted states where you've got holes in your field, there is nothing overflowing for you to send out to other people. So one of the reasons that you feel like a victim is that you're not the only one that feels energy. Other people feel your energy, and they can feel you in a contracted, self-protected state. Yeah. This took me a long time to understand. Yeah. So, right? I mean, we laugh because it took me a really long time. So we go back and forth between these polarities of the codependency and the narcissism. We all have both living inside of us, and you're just looking for that balance. And it all starts right here.
And I'll just kind of end that by saying that actually, if you're too deep in your own empathy and your own codependence and your own feelings and emotions, and you're in a contracted state, you're actually not really available for other people because you're so busy doing your own healing work that you become unavailable to other people and thereby actually become the narcissism, right? It's like this turns into a circle, and they kind of wrap into each other, and there's no beginning and there's no end. They just kind of go and they circle and they loop together. So we're sorry if this kind of throws a curveball into anybody's story about their empathy or about narcissism or the people that have hurt you. But it is all a perception and a story, and you actually can rise out of the story entirely. And this process, this of adoram, can really help you. It doesn't mean you have to stay in a committed relationship under a roof with somebody, but you can actually change the way that you see somebody. I just saw a photo on my memory feed of someone I used to consider a narcissist, and I felt nothing but love for that person. It felt so much better than feeling like I wanted to quickly scroll off. I spent some time there really in gratitude of how I was now able to see this person that I used to have a very limited view of.
Lisa, you just made a really great point. Thank you for vulnerably sharing that. Mm-hmm. You mentioned that when we do start to have to manage our own stuff and we become narcissistic, we call reverse principle mirror theory. And it's the observe reverse, really. And we believe that all judgments are really self-judgments. And we do have another video on that as well. So when you're pointing the finger at, I always attract narcissists, remember, guys, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at you. When you're a complete sponge for other people's energy and to the point where you can't function and you need to pull away from life, there's nothing more narcissistic than that. So when you're taking a look at other people and you're finding yourself making judgments, that's a gift. When you're finding yourself getting triggered, that's a gift. These are low vibration kind of set points that your higher self is showing you exist so that you can rise up out of them. And that is what the expansion method, adoram, does.
So if you're loving what you're learning today, or even if you're a little hesitant about this, but some of this is hitting home and resonating with you, we invite you to go out and practice adoram. And if you want more of a roadmap and a guide to focus on this, what we've figured out with our clients is that by focusing on one specific relationship and changing the way that you do energy within that relationship, the way that you manage your energy field using adoram within one relationship will teach you about how you show up in all your relationships and actually help you really expand faster when you can see how you do it through the lens of just one relationship. So we put together a really incredible 7-day challenge where you do exactly that. You apply this adoram, this expansion method that we've created, and that works for us and for every single client we have ever worked with. It's worked for all of our beta testers. It's worked for everybody that's gone through the challenge and completed it. And they come back and people are taking it a second and a third time because they're finding so much value in it, where you can go through these steps a day at a time to really let them sink in and really focus on one strategy a day. and then really get into an expansive state within one relationship within 7 days.
Yeah, it's a very somatic process. What you learned today, you learned with your mind. During the challenge, we actually help you to feel new feelings deep down in your body and start to embody your higher self. So we hope that we shed some new light today on your empathetic gifts and abilities, and that instead of feeling like it's a curse ever again, you truly learn how to live from this open-hearted, adorum state and make it your biggest gift. Click that link below, and we really are excited to welcome you into that challenge and into our community.